Hello, folks. Welcome to EV Tech News presented by Motor India. In today's episode, we are going to have an exclusive interview with Mr. Saurav Kumar, who is the founder and CEO of Euler Motors, a Delhi-based startup venturing into the electric three-wheeler segment, focusing on lightweight cargo haulage segments in India. And we welcome you, sir, for sparing your time with us. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our show.
No, happy to be here. I'm glad that we could do this. In COVID, doing it over Zoom, expressing our thought, it's good.
Right, sir. Thank you. And something first thing first, I guess congratulations are in order for your company's Series A funding, which means the first batch of funding for a startup. And just tell us a little bit
Uh,
about the latest investments to your company and how proud are you and how different does it feel since the moment you started an EV startup in India, which is something I wouldn't say it's something a niche product, but it's something a very booming one. It has a lot of risks in it. So how do you feel right now? It's one of the your first step towards success, right? So how do you feel?
so, uh, yeah, so thank you for your congratulations message. Just to clarify, right? So Euler, we have had a prior financing to Series A. It
Okay.
was pre-Series A that we had raised, and that was in February 2019.
Okay.
And that was led by Bloom Ventures and Emergent Venture.
Okay.
And this is our second financing in the company. We are calling this at Series A, and that this has been led by Inventors Capital, and Bloom and Emergent participated as well in the round. And then Jetty Ventures and Udan, who is founder of sorry, Sujit, who is founder of Udan, also participated in the round. It's definitely getting funded in time of like COVID and
Mhm.
being able to sort of keep the lights on and continuing our R&D and doing the development. I think there has been a bit of relief on our mind,
Mhm.
and we are hopeful that that we'll continue to sort of progress and meet the target that we have set for ourselves.
Okay, right. And considering that, as you mentioned, that this phase right now we are in is a very different one and an unprecedented one. We are facing too much of changes in both social and economic spheres. And we also see that companies are struggling, both in automotive as well as in other industries. So, do you feel like EV startups have a different scenario to start rather than automotive companies where they find it little hard to cope up with the new emerging reality?
Uh, s- okay, so yeah, see I mean, fundamentally, EV is part of automotive, right? I mean, if you think about, I mean, just overall the way industry is, right? But obviously, electric vehicle has a lot more tech, and when you say technology, I'm not saying that your prior automotive company didn't have tech. I mean, obviously, it's all mechanical engineering to embedded electronics, but I think the component of your that are going into your chip, all of that has increased when you look at an entire electric vehicle, and some of the number of component has also gone down a bit. So there is a bit of restructuring in terms of the kind of technical skills that you need, the kind of product you need, and also different kind of quality, different kind of checks that you have. So that had changed a bit in terms of if you look at the availability in terms of supply chain, some of from that perspective, right? I think some of these segment that I think India has been great at, like which has been your traditional auto companies requirement, which is either in your steel or regular logistic components that are related to the traditional automotive company. Some of that has been is being moved away, and then the new ones in terms of, let's just say, your DC-DC converter or a charger or a motor or a controller, they're new kinds of product has come up. So I think there has been some challenges in terms of finding out suppliers and being able to match the performance with respect to global competitor for those those suppliers. So I think there has been some of those kind of challenges, but in general, I think the opportunity is great. I mean, let me say, I mean, those are challenges that's totally true. There is no denial about it. But what I think what excites Euler and what excites anybody who wants to get into EV industry is about the opportunity that the segment holds. We believe that India is like, I mean, in the next decade, it will be one of the second largest sort of the EV ecosystem in terms of valuation and the market size globally, right? And when it's going to be the second largest, you want to be a dominant player. And I think we look at that opportunity and we are very excited. So short-term navigation is more like getting into detail, figuring out how to move along some of the challenges. There might be some things that would work out for us in a short-term strategy, but from a long-term, we see this huge potential for the market where Euler, being a startup in India, can build for India and also then be a dominant leader in exports category globally. So that's the kind of narrative I think we have with our thought
Actually,
process.
the reason why I asked about like EV industry specifically, is that there is a new narrative that has come up post this COVID, that there is going to be a different scenario and new opportunities for electric vehicles across all markets, not just in India. So we see a lot of reports and predictions, even in Europe, is the largest EV market, where the EV sales are tremendously going up. So in that regard, like in India as well, do you see any, is it going to be like for EVs, is it going to be like pre-COVID and post-COVID, something that kind of a turn key moment or something for EVs henceforth in this market? Do you feel
See,
that?
yeah. So the way we think of, I think electric vehicles, see the demand for EV is going to go up. I don't think there's a question of that. I think what people have been figuring out, or I think most companies or ecosystem has been figuring out, when is that sort of curve is going to come, as in when the volume would sort of grow exponentially, right? I think that some of that in pre-COVID, and in fact even during this COVID era, like where I mean, which is not completely gone, and you still country still has lockdowns at different states, and some of that continues to propagate. So yes, there has been a challenge, and I think because of that, some of the demand in general for all segments, including automotive, has sort of fallen. And but one, I think, is a general sense that most Indian population, and this is true for globally as well, that people have seen blue sky after a while, right? And I think we always used to sell that promise that, EV is going to reduce the pollution, and once that happens, the skies will look like this, and some of that. And then in the COVID era, you actually saw that for a while. I mean, I could literally go out of my house, and when the lockdown started, like some days I could count, let's just say 10 stars in Delhi, right? And then some days I could start like counting multiple more, and then you look through telescope, then you start seeing much more clearer sort of view of the sky. So I'm assuming this is true for other folks as well, right? And we have seen, like, when you're the vehicle, which is one of the largest cause of pollution that's there in the majority cities of India, that would come down. I mean, there is obviously industrial and sort of other sources for pollution as well, but automotive does account for the majority of these pollution. So having seen that, and having seen firsthand like the kind of impact that you have on health, and being able to relate, and health becoming an important topic for most Indians, I think the consumers, or be it the commercial vehicle owner, they are going to think about EV going forward. Then the other narrative which we are thinking from an economics side is that people are more turning toward things which are must have rather than good to have, so which kind of translates to I mean, in different segments that would mean differently, but for a commercial vehicle segment, it would mean like, where can I get a bit more of saving, right? A product that can give a bit more of saving over a longer period of time, that would mean more, because everybody is not thinking of spending, and any avenues that can help them save money will make them more sense. And that's where I think EV from a light commercial vehicle, where Euler is sort of focused on, will have a better value proposition from a diesel or CNG vehicle. And the other way is, other than that, the overall narrative, like, the Euler being focused on the light commercial segment, we have been focused on primarily the cargo transport segment, as in, like, with the three-wheeler cargo, and hopefully in future building out other four-wheeler cargos as well. That segment, what we have seen in pre and post COVID, that has continued to grow. There was just, like, I think 1 week where it actually fell down, and which was when the lockdown was announced. So anything which was non-essential, that cargo movement sort of stopped. But then for essential cargo, your volume kind of continued on increasing 10 to 15%. And we continue to believe that that segment will grow, and hence Euler is positioned in a very good way that we should see only positive upliftment rather than any kind of this thing. To summarize, I think post COVID, I think people are going to be more observant. They're going to care for electric vehicle from health, environment, saving perspective. And within that, the cargo, which is one of the Euler's sort of prime target and focus, that segment is going to grow, and multiple reports have talked about it, and we have seen it like firsthand with the sort of lease fleet that we run in Delhi NCR.
Right. I mean, specifically to your products as such, which is light commercial vehicles. And I understand that your company's primary targets, even for this vehicle segment, will be the institutional buyers, right? Say, for instance, e-commerce or other these delivery companies or something. Now, my point is, I can understand that this narrative that post-COVID will be a good day for EVs and something that makes sense for passenger vehicles, especially scooters, electric two-wheelers, and so on. But for commercial vehicles, light commercial vehicles, now considering that all companies are facing tremendous financial distress as well during this time, now they would like to make sure that their investments are put on right places, right? So considering that if they want to go for light commercial vehicles, now are electric vehicles being considered on par with their say conventional ICE engine rivals also, and how would the reliability and cost factors for a company, for an institutional buyer, the cost factors are tremendous, right? Rather than going for a feel good factor, the cost and total cost of ownership and all those equations come first to them, right? So that's their first priority. Now, in that regard, how reliable are EVs and how competitive are they with the conventional rival products?
Yeah, so I think the question that you have brought in, I think that is that has been our fundamental sort of like, the motivation behind the way we think about the product. So one thing that we learned, if you want to build a product for light commercial vehicle in India, see, and if you're selling to that fleet owner, right? Are you running that on your, you're running it on IC engine? What he cares is कि उसके पास 1000 kg का payload है, 500 kg का है, 700 kg का है, and he should be able to get done with his day, and his day could constitutes around 80 to 120 kilometers in a day, and he wants to make sure that he's able to deliver with minimum number of breakdowns, and it runs in different weather condition, it can traverse different kind of terrain. 700 kg, let's just say there is 1000 kgs of payload, he should be able to carry that, right? So that we understood fundamentally, I think, when we were building the product, when we are whichever segment you want to build, nobody cares it's electric or not when it comes to performance. What it then you are matching in terms of the criteria, like what's the payload that it's going to take, what's the range it will have, what's the kind of breakdown, what's the kind of secondary value it will fetch, what is going to be the life cycle of the vehicle. And if you can't sort of like compete on these criteria with an IC engine vehicle, till that point, whatever you will do, it will not be a preferred choice, right? Then you will actually have to force it down the throat of like all these customers, and that never actually works, right? I mean, you have to automatically create a pull for the product. Otherwise you're going to spend I mean, thousands and or millions of dollars just in marketing a product and trying to say that, like, a different feature. But eventually, when mechanic is facing issues, or fleet owner is going to face issues, the products are going to be returned, and there would be NPAs and all those kind of issues, right? So from a product, that was very clear. So Euler, whenever we release our product, and hopefully by end of the year, which is quarter four I mean end of this year or the first quarter of the next year, is where we are thinking about launching our commercial vehicle. It would match, quote unquote, the performance of your IC engine vehicle. So there should be I mean, I don't think we have left any stones unturned in terms of making sure the vehicle matches that, because if it doesn't, we know that the vehicle is not going to sell.
Right.
So that, you're absolutely right. And I think going forward, that's what you should expect from an Euler product, that it will beat, if not have equal amount of performance with any IC engine vehicle out there.
Right. And last time when I met, I visited your company, your assembly and everything. And that's when your product was also getting ready. And that was, like, say, 4 or 5 months before the outbreak of the pandemic. So how has the
Yes.
pandemic impacted your operations and your plans ahead? And when will the commercial launch of your three-wheeler product is likely to be?
Uh, so uh, this pandemic, I mean, delay, yes, I mean, it did. I think we are internally, I think it went by a quarter, sort of like, I think earlier we were planning by before end of the year, hopefully by festive season, but I think it's going to be delayed post that. And this is primarily, like, I think when we were building this new updated version and to be released for sale to public, we had one mandate very clear in our mind, that we want to make sure that more than 90 to 95% of the component are localized in India. So
Mhm.
we worked over the last 18 months extensively with suppliers based out of India, and making sure that from chassis to cabin to drive axle to be it even some of our controllers are being designed or at least prototyped here, and some of them are getting to even manufacturing stage. Unfortunately, during the lockdown that happened, most of our suppliers were, like, in a shutdown state, so we could not do any of the actual sort of work, other than what we could do with respect to software, or with respect to our design, be it on the embedded side or on the vehicle side, or whatever data that we had seen, and building our product iteration on basis of those. Hopefully, like, given that, like, now that some of those lockdowns have eased, so some of those progress started to take pace, and we feel that by end of the year we should be launching. If not, within the first 2 to 3 months of next year, we will be out with our product.
And how is the latest, say, tranche of investments, which is, as you clarified, like the second part of your Series A investments? So how are they going to value add to your plans ahead? And are these investment going to value add to the existing platform of vehicles that you're working on, or new platforms are likely to come up as
See, so majority of the funding that we have raised in the first tranche of Series A, right? Series A is our second financing in the company, and the first that we have announced. This money is primarily is going to be used to make sure that the vehicle that we have imagined for India, the for this release, we are going to make sure that that comes out, and that's going to be our primary focus. The other focus has been in the R&D and also in localization of some of the power electronics and some of those components in India, and primarily aligning with, like, we need to make sure that supply chain and all of our suppliers are built in India. And so some of that requires much more closer hand, because some of these things were non-existent skill sets. So we have been working with supplier. So primarily, this investment has been for R&D and making sure that we are able to launch the three-wheeler cargo commercial vehicle that we are expecting by end of the year.
Okay. And I would like to ask, say, considering this COVID-19 pandemic has, emerged from China, and it has created a kind of a global impact on the automotive supply chains as well. Now, even in India, all manufacturers as well as suppliers are facing huge disruption in terms of their supply chain in sourcing their products for their materials and everything. Now, this issue is even more acute in the EV segment, right? Where there is an over dependence of certain key components for electric vehicles from China. Now, how is this scenario likely to impact the prospects for electric vehicle manufacturing in India? Now, we also have another narrative of being self-reliant in India, where we try to localize more of components and everything. But still, the key components are still sourced from China, and I guess like the dependence on China is not just for India but also for other global markets as well. So, how do you see this new scenario?
See, so the way I see, and this is like, one entrepreneur viewpoint, and it might not be the the overall industry viewpoint. See, the way I see things is key. If you start putting in effort today, then you can expect something. You can expect something in, let's just say, 1 to 2 years. If you behave in similar fashion that you behaved in past, you can't expect a different kind of result, right? So if, let's just say, if you are not investing in pushing your supplier to look into things that, let's just say, that they have not looked into the past, or be it from material perspective or from component perspective. Let's just say, we have been working on some of the things in copper and aluminum. Some of those we have not found very, when we are looking at extreme precision sort of work. There are very few suppliers that can do some of those, but we have been pushing them. We have been giving them key, okay, there's a demand, there is front tooling and some of those things to be, so that they can build those kind of things and supply. That's on the let's just say, on the some of the mechanical side. But then if you look in the electronic side, right, what are the components that we actually depend on, let's just say, in China? So it would largely be your power electronics component. It would things like motor controller or motors, or let's just say your vehicle control unit or your instrument cluster. These are the kind of component that you're dependent. And if you look at what these components are and how they are, let's just say, built, you have a chip designing that is happening, right? I mean, you think about like a motor controller we need in our vehicle, so there is a chip designing. So that, for instance, we have been not doing some of that, and I think Euler has taken a very sort of firm view on this, and especially some of the recent geopolitical issues that also happened, that we are going to be self-reliant as a company. And also in next 2 years, how do we move our reliance out of any other country and bring some of the critical components in India, right? And so we have been designing some of those things. However, eventually the problem is not at that level. Even if you design, even if you make, until unless India has some of the IC, let's just say, development, until unless that is happening in India, some of those manufacturing are still going to be dependent on outside of India. So those are like, IC investment, those we cannot do integrated chip, and that I think at a government level, or at a mm, or some companies which are, let's just say, in Taiwan or Korea, they come and invest and set it up in India. I think some of that needs to be taken up on a bit more higher level than Euler. But other than that, I think from a segment perspective, yes. Other than that, you have cell is the other component that I see that India is to largely depend on that. There are alternatives from, like, manufacture working with suppliers who are in Korea, or which is primarily your tier one. Some of these suppliers are based out of there. So Euler, for instance, has tied up with one of the tier one supplier out of Korea. So our reliance on China, we have tried to reduce as much as possible. However, if your narrative is just purely key, can we become self-reliant and not depend on any of the country outside of India, then I think we will have to work with the governments on figuring out how do you get the materials, raw materials for cells to some of the things to start being able to manufacture cell and add value. But even if you let's just say import these raw materials or import cell, there's a lot of value even in the battery pack, which is beyond, like, which is in terms of how do you package, how do you do thermal management. There are electronics like DC-DC converters, you have contactors, you have I mean, your thermal management, your battery management, and the packaging. So there are a lot of value add that's there, and then software obviously on top of it. Those are the, like, lowest hanging fruit. Like, so instead of just saying ki, and we start getting stuck with the point ki India ke paas, let's just say today we don't have cell capability, or we don't have a IC development facility, which is fine, but you can focus on the lowest hanging fruit. Can we solve for rest of the uh, let's just say from other components than the cell? Can you do that in battery pack? In terms of electronics, can you at least do the designing, prototyping? You just get the raw materials, and at least all of that assembly, QC, software, all of that in electronics is happening in India. And then also on the mechanical side, right? Motors, India has been making motor forever, right? I mean, you have one in your house with a AC, I mean, fan that is running on your head. So we have that industry. I think if we can push a bit more R&D in terms of optimizing the stator, rotor, thermal efficiencies, electromagnetic, you would be producing, I mean, a very good motor. There is a bit of rocket science, but I don't think it's like, it's not something doable.
If that is
And
right, if that is the case, I guess Euler Motors is already, having a head start, right? With at your company, as I understand that you are, sourcing the battery cells and then assembling it into battery packs,
yes,
which in
yes.
itself
So
is a good start, right?
yes, so we said, yeah, we I mean, cell is the something that Euler could not have, like, when we started, we said let's take cell from someone, but let's add the rest of the value in making sure your battery pack is waterproof, to connect it to servers, to be able to thermally manage the temperatures of India, be it -10 that you see in Manali, or
Hmm.
55 to 52 to 50 55 that you see in some parts of Rajasthan. So how do you make sure, like, some of the thermally managed, and
Hmm.
then the vibrations that are coming from your road conditions, right? And we believe that if you make for this India, right, and if you make at a price point that India wants and deliver that value to the fleet owner, you will be able to take that product and sell globally as well, because the roads in Europe and roads in your other parts of the world are going to be a bit better than what we experience here, right? So
Right.
that's where I think we are very I think we have been very selective on figuring out what are the things that we want to build, where are the value adds we want to do in the early phases, and then how do you increase some of that over a period of time.
Right. To wind up, like, what are your key takeaways from this ongoing pandemic that has created a whole disruption in terms of demand and supply chain for automotive and electric vehicles? Now, that's one part of the question. Second part is what sort of technological megatrends or technological shifts you predict in the upcoming year, as this pandemic is going to be definitely a turn, a key event in our lives. So how is this going to impact the technological advancements and the megatrends that we were previously predicting or read to come up in the years to come?
So, okay, from a pandemic perspective, right? So I think one of the thing, at least that it did for me, right? I'm sure it would have done for other, top level folks at other companies was, I mean, everything went on a pause button for a second, right? I mean, your time started moving very slowly. Like, I mean, suddenly things are paused. You had more time to sort of reflect back on what's going on. And I think being able to realign our thinking for the future, and not being able to, I think, not just thinking about the immediate present, but take a step back and think about like how it would look like in 2 years, 3 years, and making sure that the organization is stable to these kind of hiccups that might come in future. So, and those were, some of the Atmanirbhar, self-reliant supply chain. How do you build some of that in India? How do you invest in technology, invest in R&D, and to create those able to look at the differentiation in the market. Then from a business perspective, focusing on segments that are going to continue, let's just say, for instance, in our cargo light commercial vehicle, right? Focusing on the e-commerce, the pharmaceutical, your utilities, companies which are very institutional. How do we think through them? So from a business perspective, I think those were the fundamentally things that were there. From a bit more of a social perspective, right? I think I'm more than, I would say, more pumped than ever to make sure that electric vehicle comes in India faster than ever. The reason being, I mean, why? I mean, when you see this promise of EV being able to reduce some of the pollution and reduce some of the reliant on oil, and so why not push that? And as an engineer, and now as a founder, I feel that we have that capability to sort of accelerate this transition, irrespective of what narrative everyone else has. We want to do that, and I think there's a larger benefit that is there, and especially, and when we look at the economics, and this is future, so we just want to make sure that that happens. On the key takeaway, one of the things that we realized was the connected part of the Indian automotive segment. When you buy a car, like for instance, when I bought a Toyota Fortuner, or I mean, this is like 4 5 years back, right? Or maybe even 6 7. So they had that GPS and some of these telematics unit, which used to be additional to, you buy the vehicle, that used to be optional. When I bought an E2O, some of that was part of the part of the vehicle experience that was there. So when we look at the three-wheeler, I mean, at least from a Euler perspective, the commercial, vehicle, I think connected is going to be a large part of our story, even though if you see most of the vehicle telematics unit, it comes as a feature and it says optional. It is never actually sold as a main part of the thing. But what COVID has taught is, like, if for instance Euler had leased roughly around 200 vehicles to different customers of ours, like Big Basket, Ecom Express, Udan, and some of the customers, right? Being able to not be on the ground, and you have that anxiety, right, to understand as a fleet owner what is happening to the vehicle. Are the vehicle charged? What is the range left? Where are the vehicle? I think there's a whole connected vehicle experience. I feel that will enable, or at least help, some of the fleet owners or the big institutional players to be able to plan and optimize, if or even react faster in case there are any challenges and issues. So connected vehicle experience narrative, I definitely see that growing, and something that I think, and with connected vehicle, that automatically means your electronic software, some of, and then the features that are built on top of that. And if you project that in the background, the kind of skill sets and things that you would be looking for. So that's I think one of the key thing that we at least think.
Right. Absolutely. As you said that this electrification as well as connected technologies always go hand in hand together. And also it opens up, different business models as well. Not just, creative user experience, but also business models, which is more relevant for your target customers who are into, LCV segment buyers. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for sparing your time with us.
Thank you for having me. It was good to chat, and it is good to like. And I wish we could have done this in person. I could have shown you like 1 year before and 1 year after story. But yeah, I mean, hopefully, when some of this is better, do come over, and we'll happy to have you
sure,
walk over like some of the things we are doing.
sure. And in EV Tech News, we'll be happy to to record your developments periodically as far as your company is concerned.
Definitely.
Yeah. Thank
Happy,
you.
happy, and like if you want have questions, shoot them to us. Happy to answer them
Sure.
and be
Right.
engaged with the
Pleasure.
community.
It's our pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Right.
Bye.